The world we live in is full of things that we don't understand. Being the curious human beings that we are, we naturally try and seek these things out. Doing so has led us to remarkable discoveries and inventions that we could never have imagined 100 years ago. We have defeated disease, built to the sky itself, and even created machines that could take us beyond the clouds and into the stars. If our ancestors could see us and the things that we have created, I'm sure that many of them would see us as gods. Our innate curiosity and lust for knowledge has not always led us to greatness, however. True evil and darkness have always been uncovered in humanity's conquest of knowledge. And in the end, I fear this evil will be our doom. I do not say this from the standpoint of a great philosopher who has sat and simply pondered things either. No, I say this because I have seen it, experienced it. I was a part of it. The event that I'm about to relay to you is true in its entirety. This I swear. I feel, however, that this will most certainly fall on deaf ears, and many of you will believe this just to be another spooky story meant to give you cheap thrills. But I promise, this is neither my intention nor my purpose. My purpose is to simply warn you of what lurks beyond the veil of what we can see and what we can understand, to show you what awaits us in the darkness, even if I myself don't understand it. What I'm going to say has happened, and I feel certain it will happen again. In 1971, a not-so-well-known scientist began preparations for an extremely secretive project, known simply as the Harbinger experiment. I would like to keep the identity of this scientist a secret for personal reasons, so throughout this recounting, I will refer to him as Zimmerman. Zimmerman's background is unclear at best beyond 1971. All that's known about him before that time is he'd grown up somewhere in Maryland with strange fascination for the occult. This later made him an outcast among his fellow scientists due to how scoffed upon the metaphysical was, and still is, at the time. Zimmerman's opinions concerning the otherworldly were not the sole cause for him being an outcast, though. It was his methods that made him wildly unaccepted among his peers. Zimmerman was well known during his time for being ruthless and cold beyond measure. He never cared about the means, all that mattered to him was the results. It was this insatiable and brutal lust for the truth that made him feared among those that knew him, and those that did not fear him followed his work very closely. The word Harbinger itself has such a mysterious and intimidating taste to it. Maybe it's the way it rolls from our tongues, or maybe it's simply due to its association with the project. But the word always seemed to carry a certain amount of doom with it, which would make sense. The word itself means to warn or forebode. I can't imagine Zimmerman's reason for giving the experiment this title, but in retrospect, it fits perfectly. Zimmerman came to a select few, me being one of them. He told us we were working on something big, and that he needed people who could keep confidentiality and not spread idle gossip of his work. While he did not fully trust some of us, he did know that we were professionals and that, for some reason or another, we were all in dire need of employment. I had worked at the local clinic as a doctor, but I was caught stealing medication and I was promptly fired. This left a very dark mark on my resume, so work was hard to find. I was also an Alaskan native and I lived near where the experiment would take place, so I guess you could say it was a convenient choice for me. As you can imagine, I jumped at the opportunity. It was hard not to when I saw the payout. 15 of us were hired in total. Some were colleagues of his that had been working with him for a while. Some were maintenance workers, and a few were hired as private security. I was the only medical professional to be hired. It's still a wonder to me how he even obtained the funds necessary for the experiment. I would not be wholly surprised if his financing was not entirely legal. But legal or not, I needed the money, and he was paying. Looking back, it's a decision I've come to regret. After Zimmerman obtained his money, He used it to buy a relatively large plot of land deep in the frozen wilderness of Alaska. And upon that piece of land, Zimmerman built a concrete structure, not dissimilar to a bunker, in fact. The sole difference being that its goal was to keep any potential damage contained within the structure rather than keeping it out, as he put it. Most of the structure dug deep into the earth, which had the effect of making the entire complex seem so much smaller than it really was from the outside, as would be expected. There was only one way of entering and leaving the underground structure, and it was via a ladder that led from a small, unassuming concrete building on the surface, which I will refer to from now on as the entrance, for convenience, to the network below. After everyone had gone to bed at night, the hatch that contained the ladder would be sealed off with a very large and thick metal lid. Zimmerman was strict about this. Located not too far away from the entrance building was a series of wooden cabins that would serve as the sleeping quarters for the staff Zimmerman had hired. Compared to the entrance building standing on the surface, the underground system was massive. At the center of the complex was a control room. This is where all of the facilities, electronics, and such were to be linked. This included security cameras, lights, and door controls. Consoles, monitors, and computers lined the walls of this central chamber. This was also where the ladder in the entrance building connected to the underground complex. Connected to the control room were 3 doors. One led to a smaller room that served as the infirmary. Another door led to a break room, and the last door led into hallways. These halls were where the complex began to feel extremely eerie. They were, for some reason, laid out in an extremely confusing scheme that led in circles into complete dead ends. These halls made up a vast majority of the complex, and it would be very easy to get lost in the maze if you were unfamiliar with the place. But if you knew where you were going, you would find yourself standing before one of 3 8x8 rooms. Each room had a camera hooked up to one of the corners, and all 3 of those cameras were connected to a corresponding monitor in the control room. Cameras were also scattered throughout the hallways, so that whoever was watching their corresponding monitors could see anywhere they wanted, when they wanted. Thick metal doors stood at the entrance to each of the 3 8x8-foot rooms, and in order to open them, you would have to enter a 4-digit code into a panel located near the door.